All right, welcome to our next session for the pyramid model, preschool practices. Today we are going to finish up talking about high quality supportive environments. So just to remember that the pyramid model trainings are set to support children's social emotional development for ages birth to 5. Each training is a standalone training, which means that you don't have to have attended any of the previous sessions in order to understand the content. So today we are going to talk about engagement in the classroom. We do have quite a full session today. So if you have questions as we go, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask or drop it in the chat box. We'll be monitoring the chat box throughout the whole session. So let's go ahead and jump into today's content. So we're going to start with promoting children's engagement. We talk about engagement. This is when a child is actively attending or participating in an activity. So this might look like a couple different things. This might look like them following directions, actively communicating or interacting with either a peer or an adult, using materials relevant to an activity, playing with a peer, or even just listening. So there are many times when children may engage in behaviors because those behaviors are incompatible with the engagement that we're trying to facilitate. So this might look like humming or hand flapping or rocking, or even not making direct eye contact. So we should not assume that the child's not engaged. Instead, we should observe whether the child is attending or participating in the activity, even when stereotypic challenging behaviors are occurring. So when children are engaged in developmentally appropriate and appropriately challenging activities, they are less likely to engage in challenging behavior. When they're engaged, they're also more likely to learn. So we've talked about classroom environments a lot so far in our sessions, but many children learn from high quality early learning environments. But some children, including children with disabilities and children who are multilingual learners, or even children who have experienced trauma or with communication needs, might need additional support to engage with their environments. So one of the keys to preventing challenging behaviors is to ensure that children are engaged in activities with their peers or with their adults. So we want to build on relationships with children on an individual basis and make sure that we're planning activities that help promote the engagement of each child. So why might children not be engaged in an activity? You can either drop a thought in the chat box or unmute yourself and verbally respond. What are some reasons children might not be engaged in an activity?
The activity might be under their growth development, like not like the appropriate age for the activity. I've noticed that in some of my classrooms where either the activity is too advanced and so they lose interested or get frustrated, or the activity is too like easy for them, and like maybe they're a 3-year-old but it's like a 2-year-old activity, and so they're like bored with it within 5 seconds. They're
Absolutely.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
go ahead, Gloria.
well, I was just going to say some of my experiences have been like even this year that sometimes the kids have just a difficult time engaging because of overstimulation. It throws their focus off, so they're unable to engage. They're more focused on the overstimulation that's in the room, and so they're unable to engage in what we're doing with them, at that present time.
Yeah, that self-regulation skills really benefit whether or not they are engaged in an activity, for sure. And some kids don't quite have those skills yet. Yeah, and Sarah was talking about, being under challenged or over challenged in an activity. And that does come around to making sure that the activity is developmentally appropriate and making adaptations per child too for the activity, because what we can plan for the majority of the group, we're still going to have some kids who that's not challenging enough for them, or that's too challenging, and we're going to have to make some adaptations to make sure that it is just right at that level, like the three little bears, and make sure that they can engage with us. Does anybody else have ideas about why children might not be engaged in activities? So we might also see children are not interested. They don't understand what's happening. They don't know what to do. They might need to physically move because they've been sitting still for too long. We may not have given them any choices, so they have no active participation in the activity itself. It's very passive. They might not be getting enough teacher attention or feedback, and then they might also need help getting started. So there's lots of potential answers, and no matter what the answer is, we want to always try and make sure that we are doing as much as we can to increase that engagement. So that might look like offering choices. That might be supporting their engagement by scaffolding. We talk about scaffolding, that's providing the correct amount of support per individual child so that they can engage in the activity. Feedback, so that positive feedback we've talked about in many of our trainings, making sure that we are identifying what a child is doing well and why what they're doing is going well, and then making modifications as needed. We're going to unpack each of these line items within today's session. So the power of choice is a huge key practice to making sure that we are using developmentally appropriate practices and that is going to help us maintain that engagement and active learning of young children. It is a very powerful prevention strategy that can help result in a decrease of challenging behaviors. So choices can be, there's lots of opportunities to provide children with choices throughout the day. This can range from very simple, from a choice of a song that they want to sing at circle time, or even simply on how to sit on the carpet in a large group. There's some visuals on this slide that show, how choices might be offered with a visual and text. So the songs on the left-hand side, they get to choose one of those 6 songs. On the right-hand side, they get to show which way they want to use their legs, like pretzels, so it's straight pretzels or crisscross pretzels. Just very simple choices that can be offered for them. This is an example here, is an easel that the teacher uses for the majority of activities during morning meeting and transition to centers. After an activity is finished, a child will flip the page to the next activity. So many of the pages have interactive parts, so that might be choices or symbols to place. And this would help with, this could be a classroom job to help with that engagement, especially if we've got a kiddo who needs, more one-on-one attention. He or she can be by your side to help offer these choices within large group activities. At the end of morning meeting, there are different pictures here for choices for center time that the kids can choose from. And then the picture on the right shows that the Open Science Center has 4 children who can participate in that center. And so kids are limited by the number of spots within centers, but then they still get to choose which center they get to go to. This might not be needed in all classrooms. This is simply provided as an example. All right, we're going to watch a short video. This looks at large group engagement. So we're going to watch for what kind of engagement strategies we see within this video here at Circle Time. Let me double check and make sure I've got my sound shared. I do. And this video is about 3 minutes long.
We're going to pretend we're trees. Ready? Put your branches up in the air. Put your branches up. And you hear this little tiny breeze coming from the ocean, so you're swaying your little branches. But the wind gets harder. And the wind keeps blowing. Keep your feet on the floor. Keep your roots on the floor. And it's even stronger. The wind is stronger. And then it slowly stops. Did you see the wind moving you?
Yeah.
Did you feel it moving you?
Yeah.
We feel it, huh? Go like this. What do you feel when you do this?
I
Aire.
little bit.
It's a little bit of wind. If you go like this with your clothes, you feel it even harder. And today we're going to be watching out for the wind when we go outside. Okay? Good job, everybody. Jump. All right.
1, 2, 3,
4, 5, 6. How many?
6.
Oh, hard one. Like this.
5, 4. 5, 4.
Okay, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How many?
9.
And I'll show you the number. What number is this? 9. Let's go.
1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How many?
9.
If your name is Eddie, stand up and dance. If your name is Eddie, stand up and dance.
La 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 la.
Good.
Ooh, Eric did some
Now, you
jumping.
want to join in with me to the singing? I want to hear all of you too.
Everybody will get a turn.
Everybody's gonna have a turn. Ready?
Okay.
If your name is Sandra, stand up and dance. If your name is Sandra, stand up and dance. La 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 la. Good.
Wow.
Let's see who's next. If your name is David, stand up
No.
and dance. Wanna try? If your name is, wanna part of that?
Can I dance with you, David? Okay.
There you go. If your name is David, stand up and dance.
If your name is David, stand up and dance. La 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 la. Good job, David.
Good, David, good. Thank you, Mr. Rice. Now let's see who's next.
All right, we're going to go ahead and stop the video at that part.
We're going to pretend.
Got some questions here prompted. What were some of the strategies that the different teachers use in the different activities to help with the children's active engagement?
Well-
When, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The first teacher, I like the way that she was really, really dramatized at, explaining to the children or showing the children about the wind. She just put a lot of herself in there. She acted like a big kid, and I feel like when we do that, when we lower ourselves down to what's relatable to the children, then that helps them relate to what we're trying to share with them, and they can see how much fun it is. Obviously by our engagement, if we're happy or sad, then they engage in that way as well. When we just kind of are just really spontaneous and bold and excited about what we're presenting, it helps all the children focus on us and what we're trying to share with them at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, if we're sitting kind of on the floor expecting them to do these activities without very much emphasis from ourselves and excitement from ourselves, that's definitely going to tone it down on how involved and active they're going to be in that activity.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gloria. Sarah, go ahead.
So I liked in this, I think the second video with the, the child that didn't want to like get up and dance at first, Mr. Rice got involved with him to, to overcome that shyness and just to, engage, like interact with the child, like on a personal level, like here, I'm here to help you. And that's what I really like about that is how like, that's one way if you've got that child that isn't used to being bold and like active, because I was like that when I was a child, and it was nice having that teacher to help me along, and like it was nice seeing that in the video.
Mm-hmm. And so once again, you're bringing part of teacher engagement and teacher active participation within the videos that we're seeing in order to get the kids engaged and participating with us. Thanks, Sarah. Go ahead, Evelyn.
I think too, for Mama piggyback on the first video, like how the teacher got the kids involved with the counting. She did an example at first with them, and then she put the hands up and showed them, the number 9, and then she talked them through it as what she was doing as well.
Yep, they've got a visual with the fingers up, and then she's counting them, and then she shows them the number 9 on the card, and then we engage in a physically active activity by the jumping. So awesome. All right. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate your feedback. So we want to make sure that there are a couple of strategies to consider, especially with large group engagement. We want to keep activities to 20 minutes or less. 20 minutes is the guiding line for pre-K, so ages 3, 4, and 5. Infants and toddlers really should not be much longer than 10 to 15 minutes with larger groups. We do want to provide some predictability with a clear beginning, middle, and end to our activities, and using routines within routines help children understand the expectations. So statements like, first we need to see who is here today, then we're going to choose a book, and we will end with singing a moving around song. We only want to continue with an activity if the majority of children are engaged. It's always better to end the activity if children are disengaged than continue and have children engaging in off-task activities or challenging behaviors. We also, just like we said a couple slides ago, want to make sure we're providing choices on, things like how they can sit and what song to sing or what book to read or what they want to clap out in an activity. We want to provide that positive feedback to children engaged in activities. So making sure we're saying things like, I see Miss Evelyn is sitting, paying attention. She is clapping her hands with us. She is ready to go. Right, and that's going to help reinforce those behaviors that we want to continue to see. And then providing individual supports or modifications, so that might be visuals, fidgets, or even modified expectations. Because even with the opportunities for engagement, there's still going to be some children who need further support. So we'll talk about modifications in a few slides. So scaffolded engagement, you might consider using visuals to help children understand the activity and the sequence of events within an activity. We also want to make sure to change the activity when a child begins to lose interest, especially if we're in a large group and the majority of the children are not interested. We need to change the activity. And then we want to make sure we kind of toggle back and forth between an activity that has preference versus an activity that has less preference. So, a favorite song or a play interest versus cleaning and reading books might be a less interested activity. Positive descriptive feedback. As children are demonstrating engagement, we should be frequently using positive descriptive feedback to let children know that they are demonstrating the expectations that we stated from them. We can provide statements such as, John, it was fun to have you singing with us. Amelia, look, thank you for raising your hand quietly. Look how Xavier is sitting on his mat. He is ready to sing. And wow, Ava and Jamal are marching with instruments. They are working together. So these statements label exact behaviors that the child is demonstrating and reinforces the likelihood that they're going to demonstrate that behavior again in the future. These are some other statements of, when we see engagement, using that positive descriptive feedback to let the children know that they are meeting those expectations that we have of them. So they have very specific components to them, identifying the child by name, identifying the behavior, and even sometimes identifying why that behavior was so important. So thinking about how to use positive descriptive feedback to promote engagement, we may forget to notice all the positive behaviors we see because there is a belief that this is what children should be doing. Or our attention might instead focus on the children, who are engaging in behaviors that we are not hoping for. So verbal feedback reinforces the positive behavior we do want to see and encourages the children to use that behavior. So we want to make a point that some children will want to be acknowledged quietly and may not want to be acknowledged in front of a whole class. That is really important too. So we want to acknowledge children in ways that they feel comfortable receiving. So modifications, especially for promoting engagement, are often necessary to individualize instruction. A curriculum modification is a change to an activity or materials that helps a child to engage in the activity. The small changes that we can make a huge difference in a child's participation, especially in their sense of belonging within a classroom and encouraging them to take opportunities to learn. A curriculum modification is an intentional change that is planned by a teacher or team that involves deliberate implementation. We'll look at a couple of different modifications on the next slide. And so we do have some curriculum modifications that were developed by the National Center for Quality Teaching and Learning, and more information with some resources from the Head Start Early Learning websites as well. So these are going to be our 8 types of curriculum modifications. We'll go into further detail about these on the following slides. So this is going to include environmental support, materials adaptation, simplifying the activity, child preferences, special equipment, adult support, peer support, and invisible support. So changing the arrangement of materials, peer groupings, or schedules to promote participation is going to be environmental support. The first photo on the left shows an example of a teacher who placed squares on the floor to indicate where to line up. The physical cue of the square helps the child know where to line up. In the second picture, we are seeing the teacher set up a preferred activity, which is a water activity, specifically for a child who does not play or interact with his peers. So because this is the child's preferred activity, he does hang in and learns to pass objects to the other children. And then in the third photo, we see a photo of a girl who's been given extra time to pursue a topic of interest. So the teacher recognized she wanted to explore further and engaged with a topic of interest. So when we look at material adaptation, this is going to be modifying the position, stability, or size of materials or the response required so that the child can participate more fully. So we've got a couple different photos here. The first one on the left, the teacher recognized the child needed additional support to remember how and where to grip a pencil. So she moved from a palm grip to a tripod grasp, and this helped make that finger position more obvious. The second picture we've got is for a child who struggles to turn the page. So popsicle sticks are glued to the pages. and that helps to make them easier to turn. And then the third photo shows a child with a individualized education plan, or an IEP, to improve self-feeding skills. So he was given an adapted bowl at snack time. And the suction base on this one helps keep the bowl in place while he learns to manage his utensils. All right, so simplifying a complicated task by breaking it down into smaller parts or by reducing the number of steps is going to be how we simplify an activity. So our photos here, our first one, child A was asked to make an A-B pattern. The child who isn't able to make a pattern is only asked to cut and glue the circles into the caterpillar outline. In the second photo, we see a child is getting overwhelmed by task with many pieces. So then he's given a bucket of only 10 pieces. So the teacher is able to help the child with the first several pieces, and then was expected to place only the last couple of pieces independently. So the child will gradually be expected to put more and more pieces together independently. And in the third photo, we see a child who does not engage appropriately in a listening center. A visual routine is provided with simple, clearly defined steps. Our next one, our child preferences. So this is going to be modifications including identifying and integrating children's preferred toys, activities, or people to help motivate the child and taking advantage of available supports and opportunities. So our first photo, a preferred toy is placed on the child's group time square to motivate a smooth transition. The ball also helps keep the child's hands fidgeting and therefore occupied so they can better attend to the group time activities. Our second photo, the teacher added props in a dramatic play area to match the interest and encourage a dual language learner who was becoming withdrawn. And then our third photo, a child who's usually very hesitant to play with materials that vary in texture and feel, including the water table outside, is paired with a favorite friend who loves exploring sensory activities. Special equipment. This modification refers to the use of special or adaptive devices that allow a child to participate or increase their level of participation. So we see a pair of loop scissors available for a child who might be struggling with cutting, a homemade stretchy band placed around the legs of a chair to give a child who squirms when they're sitting a way to move so they can bounce their feet quietly on the band. And then the third one, there's a wedge for them to sit on the cushion, allowing slight movement and sensory input for a child who does not sit still and struggles to attend at circle time. Adult support. This modification is going to look at having adults intervene, and this might look like a child intervening in a child's play, or using encouragement to support their participation in learning. So in the first picture, we see a teacher modeling games for a child who tends to stand quietly near a fence. The second photo, a child who does not use many tools in the science center, is shown by an adult how to use the magnifying glass to examine bugs. And then the third photo, we see an adult who's ready to acknowledge a child who's independently transitioning to go inside by lining up, and so they're helping with that emerging skill. Peer support. In this modification, peers are the ones who model and offer encouragement to support a child's participation. So we see a new child who is a dual language learner is being spoken to by another child in the child's home language. In the second photo, a child who does not attend or follow rules of circle time, such as raising their hand, they're going to be seated next to a peer who is strong in both skills. And then on the last one, we see a child who does not know how to start a story activity in the listening center is paired with a friend who can move through those steps. And then our last set of supports here, invisible support. So this modification involves a purposeful arrangement of naturally occurring events within one activity. So the first two photos are linked. So at morning meeting, the children are first engaged in a quiet activity. After a few minutes, when a couple of children lose interest, a movement activity is introduced. We alternate between stationary and motion, movement activities in order to, place intentionally shortened circle time. In the last photo, we see children using Play-Doh. So for a child who has difficulty manipulating the material because it requires a lot of motor strength, the teacher is going to arrange so that the children are taking turns to knead the Play-Doh after most of the hands kneading it has been done and the material has softened a little bit. So that is our 8 types of support. Did anybody have any questions for me before we move on?
I just wanted to add something for supports, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So I use 2 different types of supports in my room that weren't mentioned, and like the wedge and stuff. I use that, but one of the other things I use too is a weighted vest that works really well. And what's cool about the vest is it has like 6 weights in it, so you can take them out and figure out which one works best for the child, because some children don't need all of the weight, some only need 2. And most recently, we also got from Lakeshore, which was really cool. It looks like Clifford the Red Dog, the big red dog, but it goes around your shoulder. It's like a shoulder buddy. And it doesn't really weigh a whole lot, but it works wonders. I mean, I put it on one of my kids who loves to, I call it sitting on your head in circle. And once we put it on him, he's just right there looking at us, engaged in everything. And it was just that simple this time. So I just wanted to let everyone know about those 2 items that I recently started using over the past few years that work really well and are versatile for different children and their means.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of benefits of like weighted items for young children, and we see so many like fidget items these days too that benefit children, even those who haven't been diagnosed with anything.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gloria. All right, so we're going to have some resources for you guys for today. Many of them come from the National Center for Pyramid Model website. So we have some family resources as well as some classroom resources that we'll be sharing in the follow-up email. We're going to go through kind of quickly expectations and rules. So we're going to skip this video. We're going to kind of just briefly go over expectations versus rules. So expectations, children are less likely to engage in challenging behavior when they know what to do, how to do it, and what is expected from them. So both expectations and rules are important. They help connect with the children in different ways. So expectations are going to be very broad agreements that help guide the children interact with their peers and with their environment. Rules are going to be more specific, and these are going to be what behaviors demonstrate those expectations within a specific setting. We're going to define these a little bit further. So these terms are often used interchangeably, but for the purposes of today's training, we are going to make sure that we differentiate them, and because they are going to have different purposes. So we're going to look at the difference between expectations and rules. We're going to talk about strategies in developing them, and then we're going to talk about strategies in teaching them. So expectations, some examples of these are going to be general ways you want people to act. They are going to apply to all people across all settings. So respect each other, be honest, be friendly, be responsible. They're very broad statements. So we want to make sure that we create them across maybe a school or even a whole program. This is going to help create a shared language so that no matter when a child starts in a classroom, they're hearing these exact same expectations from birth to 5. You know, we are kind, we are responsible, we are friendly. If we have a site that has these expectations that are program wide, then they are hearing that from the time that they are infants all the way through the time that they finish pre-K. So that's why we want to encourage that to be a school-wide shared language. Here's some examples of some expectations. We also want to make sure that we're addressing our bilingual students, so making sure our expectations are available in the languages to connect with our bilingual children. Rules are going to be developed for areas or activities where children might need a little bit more guidance on how to engage in those expected behaviors. So the definition here, rules are going to help clarify expectations for specific settings. They will only apply in certain settings. So things like, you know, if we have a generalized expectation of we're going to be safe, being safe looks different inside versus outside, right? Because we wouldn't have running inside, but we might have running outside. So some example rules: move carefully around the classroom, walk with your group, keep bikes on the bike path, and stay on your spot. So these are going to be, when we are developing our rules, we want to ensure we're using language that is inclusive. So things like listening ears or walking feet might not apply to everyone in an inclusive classroom. So we do want to think about a few things we need for all children to do and how to phrase our rules so that children can understand what's expected. So these are examples of posters for different areas in the classroom. So taking turns, cute little kitties helping friends with the ants and cleaning up. This slide provides a couple more examples of classroom rules. So these rules clarify what the expectations look like in different activities. These are some large group rules that we might have photos of near the front of our circle time area. And just like with everything else, we might have to individualize some of our rules to meet our children's needs. So we want to make sure that children understand the expectations in the rules. And we might have to individualize our support to meet the needs of each child. So the concepts of teaching and acknowledging here. So we want to teach our rules in different ways using different materials or different procedures. This might include reviewing visuals. This might include acting them out with puppets. This might have them role play it with different children. We also want to give multiple opportunities for the children to practice these rules in a non-crisis time. And then acknowledging, giving children that positive descriptive feedback when they are either meeting the expectations, either meeting the expectations and rules or attempting to meet the expectations and rules. Some kids will need higher rates of feedback as they are learning those new skills. So some things we might do to individualize behavior expectations and rules. We might include visuals. This could be on a key ring. These could be on a piece of paper with a Velcro with a picture of the child themselves. Let's see. So in the chat box, we're going to do each of these real quick. We're going to name it. We're going to identify whether each of these statements is an expectation or a rule. So we've got, we are super friends, move carefully, feet on the floor, safety first, show respect, focus on the teacher. So in the chat box, you can either type out the whole word for as we go through these, or you can do E for expectation and R for rule. So first one first, we are super friends. Is that an expectation or a rule? We got one rule. We've got a couple of expectations. Okay, looking good. So this one is going to be an expectation. We are super friends is an expectation. Because what Super Friends looks like is going to be more specific in different activities. All right, number 2, move carefully, rule or expectation? Okay, got some R's and got some rules coming in. And that one is going to be a rule. Yep, that one's a little bit more specific. All right, next one, feet on the floor, rule or expectation? Good, you guys are doing great. Yep, that one is going to be a rule, very specific on what we're doing here. Next one is safety first. Okay, we got a little bit of a mix between rules and expectations on this one. So safety first is going to be an expectation. What safety looks like, again, inside a classroom is going to look differently than what safety looks like outside the classroom. So that one's a little bit more broad, a little bit more generalized. Show respect, expectation, or rule. Okay, we got a couple E's and R's. So show respect is going to be an expectation. This one's a little bit more broad. And then last one, focus on the teacher. Got an R from Sarah, E from Gloria, R from Ariel, R from Amy. Yeah, so this one is going to be a rule. This one is going to be a little bit more specific. So great work, you guys. You guys should give yourself a round of applause. Very nicely done. So, you know, when we think about rules versus expectations, we have to think about a broad, generalized statements or expectations, and then the more very specific details are going to be within the rules themselves, and it's going to vary from activity. All right. So when we're developing our rules and expectations, we want to make sure that we have 4 key components. We want to make sure that they are positively stated. So things like be safe versus don't run. So make sure that it's positively stated. We want to leave out no's, don'ts, and stops. Limited in number, that we have 5 or fewer. It includes a visual representation. So this might be clip art pictures, this might be web pictures, or this might be pictures of the children within your own classroom doing those behavior expectations and rules as well. And then that helps them kind of take ownership of how they act within their classroom. And then consider the skills that children need to be successful. So do they need to practice sharing? Do they need to practice turn taking? Those kinds of skills are really important at this age group. All right, so a couple of other things to consider when creating those expectations and rules. We should provide opportunities for families to also give input when we are creating those expectations. Families are going to be more likely to support your expectations in the classroom if they feel ownership in the developmental process. So we should also create ways that children can give input on developing class rules. So what do they think is important so that their class can meet the expectations? We might ask questions like, what do we need to do to be safe outside? How can we be respectful in circle time? We might also consider collecting data on when challenging behaviors occur and why. And this will help us reflect on that data to determine what kind of expectations and rules might need to be implemented to prevent those challenging behaviors. So here's a way you can engage families in helping you identify expectations. You might provide a survey or even host a family meeting where each family member can identify the child behaviors that they would like to see in their home. And then we can use their responses to create a master list and eliminate some duplicates. So then we'll group it by category and then label the category. So we want to share this with families so they can see how their input contributed to the development of expectations within our classrooms. All right, we're going to skip this video. This one was a video of a program helping them involve the families and children in establishing teaching expectations. Actually, it's only 1 minute long. Let's go ahead and watch it real quick.
Well, a couple of the questions on the home visits are actually directly related to rules. So we ask about what rules that the families have at home. And we also ask about how do you what rewards and consequences you use in terms of the children following or not following the rules. And most of them, fortunately, turn out pretty similar. It's following directions, it's being safe, things of that nature. Home rules keep you safe at home, and the school rules keep you safe at school.
We involve families a number of ways. In our program, we have a weekly newsletter where we hit the classroom rule that we're working on for that week. And we give examples of what it looks like. For instance, a safe body would be, hands to yourself, feet to yourself, body to self. And then we give them the language that we're using in the classroom. And then we also provide family nights once a month where we do some more family-wide practice.
We involve the kids in establishing the rules, generally by having them help generate some of those more details. And a lot of times they give really cool responses that are right on target. When we talk about what does it mean to be a good friend, a lot of kids will volunteer, that means sharing toys, that means being nice to them, that means saying nice things. And so they feel that ownership too. And sometimes groups of children emphasize different things. Some groups might emphasize, taking turns with materials, while another group might focus on compliments, saying nice things to each other. And that's totally fine. Both of them demonstrate, the expected behavior of being a good friend. Well,
So there's different ways to get your kids and your families involved, but it is important so that they can, feel that ownership that we're talking about of those expectations and rules in the classroom. So when we are developing rules, we do want to make sure that they're linked with an expectation. So this slide is a matrix of a worksheet that your classroom team might use to align the rules to expectations to help limit the number that we develop for an activity or for a setting. Remember, we want to try and keep it 5 or less. Rules are behaviors that the children use to meet expectations. So if we have an expectation listed but no rule is aligned, we might think about how the child can meet the expectations and what you would teach. An expectation matrix is also a tool to help adults discuss, agree on, and be more clear about expectations for children throughout the day. So we have here, how to show respect in the classroom as those soft touches. On the playground, it's going to be taking turns. And in the hallway, it's going to be that inside voice. So make sure we've got expectations so that we can have rules in the different areas as well. We also want to identify what skills we want all children to learn before we plan our expectations or rules. So sometimes it's tempting to develop a cute song or a cute acronym and let that drive your selection of rules or expectations, but we want to make sure that we are targeting skills we want the children to learn so they can be successful in the classroom. So this might, include getting input from families and children, being clear with words and visuals, limiting the number of expectations and rules, and using visuals to help children see them throughout the day. All right, last section for today, teaching and acknowledging expectations and rules. So a couple key components to teaching expectations and rules. We want to teach them very systematically. Just like everything else we teach, we want to give examples and non-examples. Then we want to embed opportunities for the children to practice throughout the day and vary materials and procedures for children who might need further support. So most important things, we just like ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, we have to teach expectations and rules. Once we've developed a classroom expectations and rules, we have to provide those opportunities for the children to practice those rules by modeling, role playing, even playing games to teach the rules. We want to make sure we provide as many opportunities as possible for the children to practice the new expectations and rules. We want to refer to them throughout the day and use that positive descriptive feedback to let them know when they are following the rules. And then link your rules with the expectations, right? So something like, wow, look, you're staying safe with your team. You are so safe. Or I see Logan and Kai using listening ears. They're being so respectful. So we might teach rules through a couple different strategies. This might include priming, feedback, incidental teaching, games, children's literature, social stories, adult modeling, modeling with puppets, songs, finger plays, flannel board activities, and role playing. Some other ways to promote expectations, we might have a bulletin board for the children to see and the families to see. T-shirts with the expectations stated on them, photo displays, classroom books, plays, songs, classroom celebrations, family lesson plans, playground parties, video production, family newsletter, and also making sure we're sharing with our administration. This is a picture that shows a funny school mascot coming to dance, sing, and have fun while learning the expectations. So there's, we are safe, we are helpful, we are team players, we are kind. Catching children following the expectations and rules, we can give them lots of positive descriptive feedback, especially when they're first learning. So this might be commenting on their appropriate behavior, giving them that positive descriptive feedback, acknowledging how their positive behavior is when we begin teaching and expectations and rules, and then making sure that we individualize and acknowledge to create more meaningful connections. All right, we're gonna skip this video, but this video was a quick example of the teacher naming the expectation and then providing that positive descriptive feedback. This picture shows how a classroom uses a handprint with the child's name and a short statement of what they did to be a friend. This is an example of children putting their names on a heart and sticking it to a tree if they were observed following an expectation. Other children can also put a friend's name on a heart if they see them engaging in these expectations. And at the end of the week, all of the earned hearts went home on the picture frame to share with the families. Just a quick little plug about CLIP, Behavior Expectation Systems. This uses a punishment approach with the loss of activities or rewards, so things like 3 strikes and you're out. These kinds of systems are more applicable and appropriate for students who have learned social rules and consequences of rule violations, so older students. So these systems are not quite effective for teaching young children, very young children, the rules or appropriate social behaviors. So if you are using this kind of system, I would encourage you to try and reframe your system so that the children are acknowledged for following expectations. All right, some keys for positive directions. Make sure we're keeping them simple, short, and specific, using a calm, neutral tone. Tell the child what to do rather than what not to do. Provide additional support as needed. and then acknowledge them when they are following directions. So these are examples of some positive directions, but there's some examples and some non-examples. We want to stay away from questions. So things like, can you please sit on the carpet right now? They could say no. They could say, no, I cannot sit on the carpet right now. And then we have to readdress this, versus saying something like, sit on the carpet. That is more direct. It's very short, and it's telling them what to do. Do not run in the hallway. That doesn't tell them what to do. So we might say something instead, like, use your walking feet. And then the third one, will you please clean up all the blocks in the block area? Again, they could say no. It's a question versus telling them, put the blocks on the shelf. All right. So just like what we've gone over so far, we want to make sure we are engaging our families with this process by providing information to families about expectations and rules they can use at home. We want to develop strategies to provide families with information about how children are engaging in expectations in the program. So this teacher created postcards with positive notes so everyone could see all the good things that are happening in the class. And then this is going to be a resource that we share with you guys to help families think about creating rules at home. So making sure that they know the different components of rules, making sure that they're positive in nature, and help children understand what to do as opposed to what not to do. So these might be some example rules to share with your families to use at home, using gentle touches, using kind words, staying in our yard, gentle hands and feet with nature. So this is going to wrap up this section. We went through a lot of different content today. I'm going to drop our, I'm going to send our evaluation link in the chat box. Let me put it in there right now. So this is going to be how you receive your in-service hours for today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have any questions about any of the content that we covered today?
So I have sorry if I'm interrupting. I have a few. So we've tried to use like fidget toys in like the classroom, and sometimes they just, for example, we have the we had like a padded seat cushion like that had little grooves on it. And we just were having a hard time for that working.